In the winter of 1959, 9 highly trained hikers trekked deep into the frozen Ural Mountains of Soviet Russia. None of them made it back. When rescue teams finally located their camp, they found the group's tent slashed to ribbons. But the cuts hadn't been made by an attacker trying to get in. The canvas was ripped open from the inside. The hikers had scrambled out into a midnight blizzard. They were without jackets, without supplies, and completely thirstlet. For survivalists of their caliber, abandoning a shelter in sub-zero temperatures is a guaranteed death sentence. On that night, they decided the freezing darkness was safer than staying inside the tent. Igor Dyatlov and his team weren't amateurs. They were veterans of the Ural winter, on the verge of earning the Soviet Union's highest hiking certification. They were trained to handle extreme conditions and keep a level head. The photographs recovered from their cameras show a confident group, smiling and hugging in the snow, with no sign of the events about to unfold. On February 1st, they pitched their final camp on the slopes of Kholat Syakh. In the local language, that name has a specific meaning: Mountain of the Dead. The tone of their photos shifts in the final frames. One blurry exposure reveals a dark, shadowy figure standing among the trees at the edge of their camp, an image later called the Last Visitor. If that figure was real, it means their isolation was an illusion, and they were being watched long before the sun went down. Something struck on the night of February 1st. The damage to the tent suggests the entire group panicked at once, using knives to shred their way through the heavy canvas and escape. They plunged into a howling snowstorm in the middle of the night, leaving behind their coats, boots, and flashlights, scattering into the trees. Days later, the first frozen bodies were found nearly a mile down the slope, lying barefoot beneath a tall pine tree. The flesh on their hands was shredded. Directly above them, thick branches had been snapped off 15 feet high in the canopy. The state of their hands suggests they were scaling the tree with everything they had, scaling it to get away from something on the ground. As the snow melted, the remaining hikers were found. Their physical condition was even more difficult to explain. One woman's tongue was missing. Autopsies on 3 other hikers revealed pulverized bones and catastrophic internal bleeding. Medical examiners noted the force was comparable to a high-speed car crash. But while their ribs were shattered, the skin covering them remained unbroken, leaving no cuts or external bruises on the surface. To cause that level of damage requires immense physical pressure. Yet, investigators scoured the snow and found no tire tracks, no signs of a struggle, and no footprints other than the ones left by the hikers themselves. Then, lab tests added another layer to the investigation. Several pieces of the group's torn clothing tested positive for high levels of radiation. That radioactive signature coincided with eyewitness reports from that night, detailing glowing orange spheres hovering silently over the mountains. The forensic record is a list of contradictions: bone-crushing force with no external marks, radioactive clothing, and a total absence of tracks from anyone or anything else. The Soviet government ended the investigation abruptly. They seized the evidence, told witnesses not to speak, and sealed the files. The official cause of death was recorded as a single sentence: an unknown compelling force. Imagine being in that tent at midnight. Consider what you would have to hear outside the canvas to decide that running into a lethal blizzard was your only chance at survival. 60 years later, the force that drove 9 experts out of their shelter remains unidentified.